and I heard this noise, this thump on the floor. And I immediately called 911 because something is wrong with my husband.
I think none of us could live with ourselves knowing that we didn't do everything in our power to help save someone's family member. That is why we are who we are. That is what we swore to when we became physicians.
When I go in there to work, that is my patient. That is what I go to work for.
When we can't take care of the patient anymore, we take care of the family. And this is a way that they can find peace. And this is a way that they can achieve some sense of purpose for the days that are ahead of them, that they have to face.
I receive dialysis 3 times a week, 4 hours a day. I was going to be doing this, for the rest of my life.
Meeting Ashley's father was the best thing that ever happened to me. He and my brother were best friends. He came over and the traditional proposal, he got down on his knee, he took my hand, and he asked me to marry him. And I said yes.
My first experience with transplant came early on in my training when I was doing trauma. And oftentimes we were given the task of approaching families on organ donation. It was not a very pleasant experience, and mostly nobody wanted to do it. So the lowest man on the totem pole, namely me, had to do the job.
I started thinking about being a nurse since I graduated from high school. But my father, being from the old country, said, no way. My father passed away. And I thought, well, he's not here, he can't see me, so now I can become a nurse.
I've actually had a long interest in transplant, and that goes back to 1986 when my brother was an organ donor. He was killed in a motorcycle accident. 12 years later, you remember all of that stuff quite vividly, and although it feels like a whole lifetime ago, it also feels like yesterday.
And I was told by the doctor that I had very high blood pressure, and that it had caused my kidneys to fail. I felt like it was the end of the world, that I would never be normal again, that it's gonna be downhill from now on.
My husband was in the hospital approximately a week. They knew that he was not going to survive. I never wanted to be a mom without a dad, and here we are.
After we done everything, we work hard, to keep the whole entire person alive and well and bring him back to health. When that fails, we go into the next step.
My experience with being an organ donor was a very negative experience. A negative experience through a coworker whose son fell 2 stories to his death. The doctors that approached Patty and her husband, they were very cold. They said, he's not going to make it. Would you like to donate his organs? There was no one to console them. There was no one around them, just husband and wife.
Generally speaking, it would take myself, one of the security officers, and possibly a nurse if she was available, to go and approach whatever family members were there. And subsequent to giving them the bad news, maybe about 5 or 10 minutes later, we'd inquire whether or not they were interested in organ donation. This was quite often, at best, inept, because to have an officer, a nurse who was up to her neck in paperwork and patients, and a young tired physician all at the same time come approach you about organ donation, it didn't really help.
I remember my first case. I totally felt insecure when my patient, 17-year-old, beautiful little girl, was declared dead, brain dead. And I had to translate to the parents, and I didn't know how to do it. You know, they were looking at their little girl and their heart was beating, and, you know, she was breathing on the respirator. And that's when OneLegacy came on, and I thought, this is not right. These parents are hurting. How could I go in there and translate and say, you know, we want your organs? I'm not going to do that. So I remember very much this nurse sat with me from OneLegacy and talked to me and explained everything to me. And I had no idea, you know. And then I guess she touched me in some way. Immediately, I looked at the prospect of, you know, recruiting this little girl's organs as a gift, you know, and it's a gift of love.
When you're in a situation and you know that that there's the possibility of losing someone, the only thing that you're thinking about, the only thing that you're focusing on is this is not going to happen.
I don't think I quite understood the level of psychological trauma that these families go through until you face the woman whose 9-year-old girl stepped out from behind a parked car. Imagine what that family goes through, and you really have to slow down and give them time to catch up to what's going on because it's so quick and it's so traumatic.
Even though they were asking questions, they knew that I was not in that state of mind to just retain everything or to comprehend everything that they were saying to me.
When their whole life has been shattered, you have to find a way to make a personal connection with them and to let them know that you're not just standing on the outside looking in, that you're a part of this and that you're willing to be there with them.
They said to me, you have choices. And they outlined everything that would happen for what choice I made.
I have seen nurses that will try and keep us away from families because they feel like we're intruding on their grief. I've been in that spot, and you're not doing them any favors keeping us away. You're not helping them with their grief. You're taking away their choice. And in many cases, you're taking away the only chance they'll have to have something positive and of benefit out of that.
Well, it looks like a code yellow's coming in. I'm not sure what it is, but we'll go check it out. I think the organ procurement agencies approaching families independently is a good idea. I think it opens doors to allowing them as skilled and trained professionals to give families the most information in a timely fashion. And it also respects my time because I'm often fraught with more than just one patient, albeit very devastating for a family member to have to deal with the situation of a tragedy. I have 5 or 6 other tragedies that I have to deal with as well.
We become a team. This is our patient. We're working for the same purpose. We're working towards the same goal. Let's work together and let's do it.
Although that patient in that particular slot may not be cared for by me directly, they are being cared for in a way that potentially is going to help somebody else, and that's equally as important to me.
Let's write some orders. When you do get an early referral from the hospital, it really increases our ability to offer the best service, both to the nurses and to the physicians and to the family. It's important that we have a chance to go through the chart because a good half of the referrals are going to be medically ruled out. They're not going to be eligible for transplant. And the sooner we know that and the hospital staff and the physicians know that, the better we can guide the family into the appropriate path.
I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what my husband wanted to have done. Their approach is what allowed me to say yes. Because had their approach been different, even though he wanted to be an organ donor, I would have said no. So they asked the question, did I want to donate my husband's organs? And I said yes, definitely.
It's a really emotionally taxing process. It takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours with the family to go through the whole approach, to finish the consent, to do the medical social history. And when we come out of that, we don't usually do a whole lot for the next 15 or 20 minutes because you have to kind of readjust your mind from where you've been with the family to moving back to doing medical, clinical sorts of things.
Your goal is to maintain these organs well kept and stable for your possible recipients. You still care about the families. You still coordinate the care. You still work together back to back with OneLegacy because the purpose has become one. The purpose of all this is one.
The coordinator called and say, I have a match for you. And she said, you come in last night, so we need you here now. And I got this kidney that night, flown into me that night, and it was installed the next morning. And it was working.
The organs, the tissue, all that Londell donated saved or enhanced the lives of about 65 people.
I think the most important point to think about is that you're given the gift of life. It's a gift that keeps giving, and I think that kind of breaks the educational barriers, it breaks the socioeconomic barriers, and it breaks the religious barriers. That's a gift you can't buy at any store. That's a gift that you can't make at home. But it's one that comes from the bottom of your heart.
And I took care of her for 20 hours, went home, slept for 6, and come back. And she became a donor. And every Christmas, this has been 7 years, every Christmas, this mother sends me a Christmas card. Each time I receive that, I've never have received $1 million in my life, but I believe that's how it feels.
I will never regret the decision we made. I know immediately when I look in a donor family's eyes that we cry. Yes, we do that because we remember their loss, but it's not always bad. You also carry around this amazing badge of honor inside of you that this person that was so important to you got to be a hero in more ways than you can count.
I know I feel 110%, you know. I can go with that feeling, so as well as I feel from the transplant, I got to look pretty good. Maybe y'all seeing that joy in me, that appreciation, that counted my major blessing. Maybe that's what everybody sees.
I have given something that you cannot buy, and I would not change a thing.
I'm Dr. Kenneth Moritz-Sugu, the Deputy Surgeon General of the United States. I am also a donor husband and a donor father. Today, there are over 80,000 people across this country awaiting an organ transplant. Last year, only about 23,000 received one. Every day, before you go to sleep, another 16 people die, waiting for their miracle, their gift of life, their transplant. Organ donation and transplantation. It is a message of hope. It is the promise of life. It is caring for people one at a time. It is a legacy of life. And it is the right thing